My life in a nutshell. Many events in my turbulent life have helped to prepare me for my mission. It is almost as though I have lived many lives in one. I had a lot to cram in, and I believe that my current life may be my last incarnation on earth. I was born with a strong, sturdy body, and this was enhanced by years of doing heavy manual labour on the farm where I grew up in rural Cambridgeshire during the 1950s and 1960s. That was during the days when farming was fast starting to become mechanised, but it still necessitated a considerable amount of extremely hard physical work. My body is the ideal body for a long-distance walker, and it has served me well on the literally thousands of miles that I have walked. My love of nature was instinctive and reinforced by living on the farm. As a child, I roamed the countryside with my sister, and Hayley Wood, which is now a nature reserve, served as our playground. I have lovely nostalgic memories of the farm and the surrounding countryside, which back in the 1950s and 1960s was still a magical place, although it was fast starting to become more mechanised and far less diversified in response to the dictates of agricultural policy at the time. I developed an enduring love for wildflowers, birds, and wildlife. Much of what I know now was derived from going on long walks with my grandmother and from my father, who also possessed considerable knowledge about local plants, wildlife, and rural customs. These are some of my happiest memories. I continued to develop my knowledge and interest as the years passed, and, like all good witches, I became particularly interested in the medicinal properties of wildflowers. I was sent to a highly academic school where the standard of writing taught was extremely high. I continued to improve my English throughout my career, first when working as a secretary for various companies in the UK, then as a translator and press summary writer at the British Embassy in Oslo, and finally as a freelance translator working from home. Without these skills, I could never have contemplated writing this book. I love doing cryptic crosswords. It's called being a cruciverbalist. Isn't that a great word? Exercising my little grey cells and enhancing my ability to think laterally have probably helped to open neural pathways in my brain, something which allows me to create wacky poetry while I'm walking and also to write this book. I'm a complete dunce when it comes to anything to do with numbers. My love of music and dancing, both essential for my quest, as will become apparent later, was also developed during my childhood when I learnt to play the piano and attended ballet lessons for a few years. My sister and I spent much of our childhood staying at the home of my maternal grandparents at Manor Farm in a nearby village, where we would often play with our cousins when our visits coincided. The house dates back to the 14th century and is surrounded by a moat. It was a place of mystery and magic, complete with a ghost in one of the bedrooms upstairs, a priest hole hidden in the roof, access from the chimney and the lounge, and rumours about secret passages running from the manor house to the church in the village and to another now derelict moated site in the nearby wood. As children, we used to have great fun racing around the house, garden, fields, and wood, trying to find the entrance to the secret passage. At night, my sister and I would lie in the dark in the heavily beamed bedroom that we shared when we were staying there. imagining all sorts of ghostly goings-on and scaring ourselves half to death when we occasionally caught glimpses of the ghostly being which inhabited the bedroom next door to ours. I believe that Manor Farm is one of those special places where the veils between the worlds are thinner, because it had a very high vibration. I call it the shimmer, and on several occasions I slipped through into an alternate reality. One example is when I was rowing my grandmother's small boat on the moat during my rebellious teenage years. I think I was about 16 at the time. It was a lovely sunny day, but as the boat glided along, a sort of mist descended, and the boat and I drifted into another beautiful world, suffused with golden light and pastel colours. My guides were waiting for me there and provided me with reassurance and support. I returned to reality with a jolt, surprised to see that I was still rowing the boat, and hugely comforted by the presence of my guides at a time when I was questioning the whole purpose of my existence. I was 16 at the height of the hippie movement in 1969. I was extremely rebellious, and I enthusiastically embraced the whole culture of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In other words, I was a very naughty girl. However, the underlying message of peace and love resonated deeply with my inner being. I believe that it was there from birth, and it has remained with me throughout my life. During my early 20s, I developed a keen interest in yoga, the tarot, and astrology. When I was living in London during my early 20s, I studied with some of the most prominent yoga teachers of the day, and after gaining the Wheel of Yoga Teacher's Diploma in 1977, I taught yoga for a few years in both London and Hereford. I spent a year living in a yoga community and school in London, and during the evenings I used to love sitting round the big table in the basement kitchen with the other members of the community as we studied the tarot, astrology, and other methods of divination together. I was also a member of a yoga ballet group which was set up by my primary yoga teacher during the late 1970s. Although I no longer teach yoga, I still practice it. I have gradually devised my own system of exercises which incorporate a variety of the movements and disciplines that I have learned over the course of my life and are individual to me. My studies and practice helped me to channel and develop my psychic abilities and ultimately bring me to where I am today. I have been fascinated by megalithic structures all my life. This interest was fueled by my father, who had a great love of history and ancient sites. And as children, we visited literally scores of old castles and ancient monuments. I was in my element. After I left home, I used to drag my friends all over the country on my quest to commune with stone circles and other megalithic monuments. I lived in Herefordshire for 5 years during my mid-20s, first in the city, where I lived in a house full of eccentric, completely mad people, including my Irish boyfriend at the time, and then out in the countryside to the west of the city, where we had fantastic views across the Golden Valley to Hay Bluff on the English-Welsh border. I have a huge affinity for that part of the country, possibly because it's where my father's ancestors come from, but also because it provided me with a springboard for trips to the numerous sacred sites in the area, such as Arthur's Stone, Llanthony Abbey, May Hill, the Malvern Hills, and the mountains in Wales. At the age of 27, I moved to Norway, to live with a Norwegian who I met at the Cambridge Folk Festival. Like all my previous disastrous relationships, this did not ultimately turn out well, and we split up after 5 years. I then lived on my own for about a year before I met the father of my son Alex. Alex's father was a complex, challenging character who sadly died from cancer when Alex was just 13. I lived and worked in Norway for 20 years and completely immersed myself in the languages, culture, and traditions of this fascinating country. Reading the sagas in their original language, Old Norse, which is not dissimilar to Old English, has given me a deeper understanding of the underlying pagan roots of both our cultures, and how place names describing the topography of both countries tell us something about the structure and content of our physical environment, and also provide us with valuable insights into the ways humans experience the world. Norway also has its own megalithic monuments, and, needless to say, I made it my business to visit as many as possible while I lived there. Most of them are not as visitor-friendly as the ones in the UK, so finding them often involved thrashing around in deep, dark forests with an uncertain outcome. Alex was born. Prior to Alex's birth, I had always known that I would have just one child and that he would be a son. Shortly after I became pregnant at the age of 39, I felt his spirit enter my body. It was the most wonderful, all-pervasive experience, and I knew that he would be special. I met Jilly. This occurred at a time when I was extremely low and starting to recover from a long bout of severe clinical depression. Jilly is my best friend, my mentor, a clairvoyant, a healer, and a witch. She helped me to reconnect with and develop my inner potential. I can never thank her enough for the part she has played in my life. I was initiated into Reiki and became a Reiki master in 2009. For me, Reiki and witchcraft are completely interchangeable and enhance one another. Although I am what is called a hedge witch, in other words, I work mainly alone, I also have other friends who could be classed as witches, each working individually in their own sphere of life and with their own missions. I met Steve, the love of my life. Our beautiful love story has a chapter of its own. I have been fortunate enough to travel the world, something which has helped to put my mission into perspective and make me realize that the energies that we have in Britain are extraordinary and unique. After leading a somewhat nomadic life for many years, circumstances conspired to bring me to finally settle down in the small village of Longstow in rural Cambridgeshire, not far from where I was born and grew up. It is almost certainly no coincidence that my magical home is on the edge of a major ley line, the old Roman road, Ermine Street, just 10 miles north of Royston Cave and where I was born. Every plant in our garden has been strategically placed and has a magical, medical, or culinary purpose, and the whole property has been gridded with crystals to provide protection and enhance the energies there. Tabitha. Alex and I discovered Tabitha in October 2016 when we were visiting a retail yard for landscaping materials. She was standing in a group of similar stones, and we fell in love with her the minute we laid eyes on her and knew that she was perfect for our garden and my mission. She is made from quartzite and comes from a quarry in Turkey. Now safely installed in her new home after her traumatic travels, she has slowly started to settle in over the last few years and become attuned to the energies in the area. Slowly, and with the help of Reiki, I am helping her to link up to my grid and connect up with the Michael and Mary lines at Royston Cave. I simply had to include this photo of the treehouse at Wising Arts because it is such a beautiful work of art. It was created by an artist using materials from nearby Hayley Wood, and it is located less than 1 mile from our home.